Good evening, I'm Judy Woodruff. On the Newshour tonight,
we can be the generation that ends the opioid epidemic. We can do it.
President Trump declares a public health emergency to combat the opioid crisis, what this means for America's deadly epidemic. Then, where you grow up may determine your future. Why hometowns make all the difference for younger generations in an unequal economy. And we travel to Pakistan, one of the few countries where polio still exists, to examine the challenges of eradicating the disease.
When I arrived here, there was a lot of confusion, there's a lot of chaos because of the Taliban spreading this disinformation that there's something in the polio vaccine which is un-Islamic.
All that and more on tonight's PBS NewsHour. But first, our economics correspondent Paul Salman is continuing to chronicle some of the problems with inequality across the country. Tonight, he looks at the possibility of moving up the economic ladder by moving out to other communities. It's part of his weekly series, Making Sense.
I want better for my family.
Kristen Hopper, expressing the economic motto of America even before the states united.
You're flying?
So you want your kids to do better than you've done?
100%.
The 35-year-old mother of four has gone the extra miles to make that happen. With help from the Interfaith Council for Action, a housing nonprofit, she's uprooted her family from hardscrabble Yonkers, New York, where she herself grew up, and has in effect emigrated, a mere 20 miles north, but in some respects a world away, to Ossining, New York. Ossining may be home to Sing Sing Prison, where criminals are still sent up the river from New York City, but this is suburbia, a place with far better prospects for 2-year-old twins Robert and Juliet, 10-year-old Josie, 14-year-old Gio.
The last place that I lived, it wasn't safe for my kids to walk around in. There was a shootout. They have all kinds of gangs. I know that if I stayed there, my kids would be in the streets too.
But instead of the streets, Gio is in after-school clubs, pre-law, pre-business, and the Ossining High School Current.
I want to become a lawyer, and I'm trying to work on that.
So that you can do better economically?
Yes.
How much better is it for you and for the kids?
Oh my
to
God.
be living
It's
here?
amazing.
Hopper's fiancé, Robert Brunner.
The safety is 1,000 times different than it is in a hood area. And to fit in those places, you have to be rough and tough, and it's a totally different child. It changed the child.
As it changed Brunner, who did and dealt drugs, like the hallucinogen PCP, angel dust.
It's embalming fluid and jet propellant. That's the mix of it. I used to sell it. I used to do all that crap, craziness.
The craziness climaxed when he crashed his car while high, was in a coma for 18 months.
My father, like, when the doctor said, you know, your son has no brain activity, he won't even be able to function. So then they pulled the plug on me. They basically pull it out to see if you can breathe on your own. If you do, you're good, and if you don't, you're done.
Do you think that a kid as smart as Gio is, would he have been vulnerable to taking angel dust?
I think if the crowd is doing it, I think he would do it. Peer pressure isn't easy, you know.
And thus the move upriver. Different peers, different pressures. Just ask Gio and Josie.
The people down in Yonkers, they're very mean in a way. Yeah, they like get angry a lot, and they like to pick on kids, and I didn't really enjoy that.
And in Ossining, there's like kids who are like so nice to you. Like when it was my first day, kids were asking me like, do you want to play and stuff. And it's just not like Yonkers at all.
But it could be that the people in Yonkers are as mean as they are, to use your word, because they don't see much of a future for themselves there.
That's true.
Where people here do see a future for themselves.
Yeah.
Which is their mom's whole point.
I want to show them that in order to be able to live well and not live paycheck to paycheck, not have to be on social services, not that it's a bad thing, and I'm grateful for all the help that I have, but I definitely want them to do better than me.
Now, some might say that shouldn't be hard in this case, but here's the stark fact that prompted our trip to Westchester. The odds no longer favor American kids doing better than their parents.
It's basically a coin flip at this point.
Yeah, it's just a remarkable decline in our country in terms of the fraction of kids earning more than their parents.
Economists Raj Chetty and Nat Hendren study economic inequality, growing in America for decades, as you've so often heard. But inequality itself might not be so bad if we all had a fair shot at the platinum ring. Problem is,
the fraction of kids earning more than their parents has fallen from above 90% 4 decades ago to about 50% today.
And so people who are worried about this for their kids are right to worry.
Absolutely. It used to be that everybody could count on this, that your kids were going to grow up to earn more than you. And today, it's just not something that's a feature of the American economy.
so what can a poor family with an American dream do to increase the odds of the kids moving up? Move out.
We see that in places where kids of different economic backgrounds are mixing in the same environment, those tend to be places where kids from low-income backgrounds rise up further in the income distribution.
Kind of like Ossining, where a plaque commemorates Alexis de Tocqueville's visit almost 200 years ago. He wrote, "When inequality is the general rule in society, the greatest inequalities attract no attention."
You have some really wealthy people, you have some people in poverty. It's kind of balanced.
That helps your kids?
Yeah, I want them to understand that there is hard life, that there's good life.
So they can see the good life.
Yeah,
They see it's attainable.
Of course.
Of course, because the reverse is also true.
Places that are more segregated by race or by income tend to have lower levels of upward mobility.
Consider inner-city Baltimore, which we visited 2 years ago when violence erupted following the death of Freddie Gray in police custody. According to these young ministers in training, the near absence of upward mobility fueled the protesters' anger.
People aren't feeling like they can succeed in life or get above.
It's like we're all living in this dump or this war zone.
Living in the dilapidated areas in which they live in, they feel like they're not loved, they feel like they're not cared for.
And if you think about what's gone on in Baltimore, it's a place of tremendous concentrated poverty.
Chetty and Hendren have looked closely at Baltimore, reanalyzing data from a mid-1990s experiment in which the federal government gave poor families housing vouchers to move to better neighborhoods. 20 years later,
the kids who moved at young ages are doing dramatically better as adults. They're earning 30% more, they're 27% more likely to go to college, something like 30% less likely to have a teenage pregnancy, relative to the kids who stayed in the high poverty public housing projects. And so there's clear scientific evidence that you can dramatically change kids' outcomes just based on where they grow up.
What does it say on your arm?
Only the strong survive in Chinese.
But back in Yonkers, 17-year-old Destiny Turturriello, a family friend of Kristen Hopper's from the old neighborhood, can't get out. A minor with no legal guardian, she's even having trouble getting back into school, having dropped out when kids bullied her for doing her homework during lunch. She used to give as good as she got.
If you look at me just like how you're looking at me now,
Yeah?
I might just fight you. 2 years ago.
You'd fight me? What do you mean?
I would just be like, what are you staring at? Is there a problem?
And
And
then-
then I would have hit you. And then I would have went about my day because I feel like I just took my anger out on you.
She's learned to manage her anger, but she's still in Yonkers, which has deep pockets of poverty not far from upscale, affluent areas.
What am I doing with my life? I'm not doing anything productive. What am I going to be later on in life? Am I going to be something? If I could change on living in Yonkers, I would do it 100%.
But Turturriello, like millions of other Americans, can't afford to move to a better community. Kristen Hopper only managed with help from benefactors. But finances weren't the only factor.
It was hard for me to disconnect from friends.
Yeah.
Like, what am I gonna do if I have nobody, you know? And when I actually did it, many people were shocked.
Shocked, she says, and resentful.
Is the resentment similar to the resentment that so many Americans feel towards people who are just doing much better than they're doing in this economy?
I've felt that resentment hard.
The status distinction.
Yeah, I did.
Location, location, location. An old saw in real estate, but one with poignant new pertinence in today's increasingly immobile economy. For the PBS NewsHour, this is economics correspondent Paul Salman reporting from Westchester, New York.
And that is the NewsHour for tonight. On Friday, National Book Award winner Jesmyn Ward looks at love, class, and race in her new novel, Sing Unburied Sing. I'm Judy Woodruff. Join us online and again here tomorrow evening. For all of us at the PBS NewsHour, thank you, and we'll see you soon. So you don't think the Senate Majority Leader McConnell will have to resort to the so-called nuclear option?
Last year, you seemed to be reluctant to get involved or to intervene in Syria directly. Is that one thing that's changed after yesterday?
But you're saying this really does have a major impact on the species that live here.
You're watching PBS.